Good to go.
Great. All right. Welcome to Das1 Hunt. I'm Xiao Pierre Ruth for Information Week. And in this episode of the podcast, we are taking a look at how must staffing change in relation to AI. Everyone's got some concerns and thoughts on possibilities that folks who are in the workforce can benefit, but then also what happens with the way teams are made up. What is important to organizations? What is important to employees and what they want to do in relation to how AI is not only part of the tools that they use, but also the skills that they are working with to further their careers and further their organizations. So this episode, I'm joined again once again by a good group. We have Cliff Jurkiewicz, Vice President of Global Strategy with Phenom. Ryan Bergstrom, Chief Product and Technology Officer with Paycor. Daniel Avancini, Co-founder and Chief Data Officer with Indicium. Arun Varadarajan, Co-founder and Chief Commercial Officer with Ascendion, and Luke Behnke, Vice President of Product for Grammarly. All of you, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
All right, let's start off with one of the bigger thoughts and questions on this. Luke, in the future, will career advancement and longevity really require being AI savvy?
100% yes. I think we all feel that in the last few years, especially with the AI revolution that we're experiencing. That the future's here. It's unevenly distributed, as they say, and there are some people who at Grammarly I've seen that I work with who have really jumped in on adopting new tools, have changed the way that they work for the better. And I think there are a lot of people that haven't made that jump. And that's okay. Like, we're still early and we're still kind of trying to figure it out. But right now, I think it's really important to understand what early adopters are doing. I think about it. I've said this to folks at my team. It's like you give a kid an iPad, they're unafraid to start clicking every button until they figure it out. And I really believe kind of AI tools should be the same. I think there is, for some people, a fear to jump in and say, like, do I have to change everything that I'm doing? But I like the way I work today. But jumping in, just making some small changes to how you work, using meeting summaries better, you trying to summarize action items. AI is just incredibly, particularly large language models, generative AI is just incredibly good at a lot of tasks. Particularly at Grammarly, we think a lot about communication. Communication is what we do 88% of our working day. And these models are really great at actually helping people communicate and then, summarizing and drafting first drafts and all of that. It's just like, that's one example of many of the things that people can do. I also want to say it's also not just on employees to become more AI savvy. As a vendor of software, we all are building AI capabilities into our product. We have to also think about how to make it easy on the humans using the products and to actually help them adopt AI, even if they don't know they're adopting AI, or it shouldn't feel like something new for the end users of this software. It has to just become part of the flow and part of all of these tools that we're using in a much more natural way than it is today. And that's on us as builders of software to help individuals kind of learn how to use these tools. And suddenly they'll have an aha moment like, wow, my day is very different than it was last year, thanks to these tools.
Yeah, I think you're bringing up a really good point that I would just add. It's about value. And the challenge that we're having right now is people have done the work that they're doing with the tools that they have for quite a while now. And that's where their value is measured in the organization. And what the organization is now saying, or could be saying, is we're going to bring in some new tools. And the fear is, oh gosh, like, I'm going to be new at that. I'm not going to be as proficient. I won't have the value that I have. And so there's that resistance to change. And I was saying that is one of the areas that organizations can look at, the psychological and cultural effect of these tools. It's not just about turning the tool on. It's about demonstrating to them, like, you can take this tool and do X, Y, Z with it, and we're going to get you up to speed. We're going to hold the hand. We're going to do some training. We're going to make sure that you are still valued within the organization for your experience and knowledge. We just want you to apply that with this new technology, you know. And so the reassurance of where someone sits in the organization and their value is just as important as the transformation that the tool brings.
In fact, I would, add on to that, focusing on what's in it for me. How is it going to make my life better as a starting point? In our own company, we are doing a massive transformation. I'll talk more about it as we go along. We found that the best way to drive adoption was to emphasize, how is this going to make my life better? And then everything follows logically. Then people stand up and say, hey, I want to learn. I want to find out how my life can be better. And as you create that momentum within the organization and people start sharing stories. So we have this whole notion of heroes, legends, and rituals in our company. And we use that to create folklore, saying, you know what, I did this and my life got better. And then everybody joins the bandwagon, so to say.
We'll definitely get into the flow and the fears and possibilities and opportunities as we go through the rest of the conversation. And thank you all for your input. Ryan, what skill sets do organizations need to leverage and or develop when it comes with AI?
Yeah, it's a great question, especially as we're talking about how we're all wrestling, right, to figure out how to do just that. I think first and foremost, it's really critical that organizations have and hone this ability to understand what the true kind of user challenges, whether that's for customers or even just internally, are that we're trying to solve, right? At the end of the day, like we've used the word already a bunch, AI is really just another tool that we all have in our toolbox. And I think with the excitement sometimes it gets going, and also the fact that it's still just so new, like you can kind of fall victim right to the old hammer problem. Like once you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail and you want to go after it with the tool. So before you can apply AI right, first off, you have to have a deep understanding of what are the right problems to solve in your workforce and for your customers. And that's a skill, right, that we need to get better at, because otherwise we're going to spend a lot of time trying to apply it in ways that's just not overly useful, or not as useful as it can be. I think next up, we need to be really thinking about how we're developing just this skill of kind of genuine curiosity in our workforces right now, because it's so new, because there's so many things, and we're all trying experiments right now. Like organizations who thrive and are really able to take advantage of AI in the long run are going to be the ones that are curious and willing to experiment. Know that some of those aren't going to pan out perfectly, right? But that's how we learn, and that's how we find the way. I do think you're going to need to develop across all your functions a good ability to be just literate with your data, right? It's the old garbage in, garbage out. Like the power of these tools is only going to be as good as the data that comes in. And across the organization, people need to get really good and comfortable with understanding data, interpreting data, so that they can use it to build more powerful AI tools. Not everyone needs to be an AI engineer across an organization, but everyone's going to need some level of technical understanding of how large language models work, how these different types of things work, so they can think about how it gets applied and how it gets used, how you interpret output, so you understand what maybe potential limitations are. And then lastly, I think it's really important, in organizations for people to have a good grasp of what are the ethical and legal implications of AI as well, right? Like we're all wrestling with a lot of the ethical questions. There's going to be legal questions that come up on any kind of new technology as we go as well. And I think ensuring that we understand how to use it in a fair and unbiased way, that we're maintaining privacy and confidentiality of data, and that we are staying very much on top of all the legal regulations as they continue to evolve, is going to be a really important skill for organizations too.
Gotcha. Thank you for that. All right. Speaking of organizations, Arun, at what point can organizations comfortably rely on AI to enhance their workforce and operational delivery? When does it start to really make sense? Like, hey, we can actually start to trust this.
I think the answer is now. AI is ready. In fact, a lot of times I hear this refrain saying that I'm going to wait till AI gets better. Now, the pace at which AI is getting better is happening at a much faster pace than all of us even envision. So for anybody to say, I'm going to wait and see how my neighbors are doing before I start doing AI is a bad idea. So to me, there are a few things to think about. In our company, in Ascendion, we are a company that does product engineering and platform engineering services to various, industries, be it banks, be it healthcare, be it, high tech, ISVs, what have you. And what we decided to do almost, I would say 3-4 years ago, was to disrupt our core value chain of providing software engineering services using AI and machine learning. And of course, now it's been turbocharged with the advent of generative AI. So we've always been looking at how do we use machine learning and AI and made that almost endemic to how we run and operate. And what we've done is we realized, any change, and I think all these gentlemen have said the same thing, any change, you will find that there are supporters, there are people sitting on the fence watching to see how the wind is going to blow, and detractors. I think the important thing is to quickly find the ones who are supporting this change and build, like I said, heroes and legends around it and celebrate their success. The moment people start seeing the success, and this has to start from the top. I know this may be an often hackneyed, a statement, but it has to start from the top. You have to be shouting from the top. As leaders of the company, you have to be role modeling that this change is imperative and is going to make a huge difference. And then the tipping point is when that whole intent and buy-in has reached the next level and the next level, and this becomes almost the operating model, right? So I truly believe that from a capability standpoint, AI is ready. It's all about how quickly you're going to be able to get that intent and buy-in and get that tipping point going for you.
Gotcha. Thank you for that. And speaking from, shouting from the top, Cliff, what does this mean for C-suite qualifications? I mean, what if we have situations, and I'm not saying, trying to, say this is necessarily happening, but you have bosses who are saying, all right, we need some AI savvy people. Well, boss, are you AI savvy? That's not the question. I said, I want AI savvy people on my team. What does this mean for C-suite qualifications? Does that have to be addressed too?
Well, I think certainly you could look at it a couple of different ways. And, I often hear in the marketplace, I literally had somebody say to me, but a week ago, I really need to buy some AI. And I just laughed, because, we then looked at their operation and they were being a little bit, just facetious about it, but looked at their operation and you realize that AI had already been embedded like wholly and deeply throughout all their, their core systems. And it goes without saying that, the average person, and this would include the executives, is interacting with artificial intelligence 150 to 300 times a day. You just don't know it. But when you point these use cases out, and I would say start with the use cases and help executives understand how to explain this, right? But here would be my piece of advice especially for the C-suite. Don't talk about ROI. Because the second you're talking about ROI, you're pinning an expectation of value, of return on the value of the investment in the tool that that you're trying to employ. It's not that ROI isn't important. Of course it is. But I think ROI, especially with generative AI, is still escaping us a little bit. And we can't wait to define ROI to start using these tools. And I think, Arun, you're sort of hitting on that. It's like, now's the time. Yeah. Like I often talk to executives and they're like, well, if I invest X, what's my Y return going to be? And I said, I don't know, because this is a transformation of the way that you're operating. It's a different skill set. It's a different proficiency. There are different use cases based on every single client, even if you're in the same domain, and Phenom sits in, recruiting and retention, HR, people business domain, so there's lots of changes that people go through in organizations to do that. I'm calling all of this a focus, on recalibration. And, during, pandemic and post-pandemic, we had the Great Resignation. And I'm calling this the Great Recalibration, because that's what leaders need to think about. How do we recalibrate our operation, our culture, our value, to bring these types of tools in? Because the most effective organizations are going to be the ones that combine artificial intelligence with a human being, empower those people to be able to produce a different level and depth of work far faster than they ever have before. The worst organizations, and I just have to say it, are the ones that believe you can simply just replace a person with technology, right? And that might give you, a 10-cent jump in your quarterly share price for a quarter, but how often can you repeat that? You could maybe go 2 or 3 quarters with making cuts, just keep replacing it. But eventually you need humans that are going to deliver your service and product to other human beings. And in technology can play a supporting role in that, but not really the lead role that we need. So the great recalibration is something that I think every C-suite executive needs to understand. Transformation, becoming a culture of innovation, and how do you scale that, with value in your organizations?
Yeah, very well said. Very well said. In fact, I picked up on a couple of points you mentioned. One of, I had one of my my engineering leaders come to me the other day and said, "Listen, I don't know AI. So I'm feeling a little, hamstrung by driving this change." And that's when I told him that it's not about you knowing AI. I'm not asking you to go and build a new foundational model. I'm not asking you to go and rewire a neural network. But if you understand the power of AI and appreciate the power of AI, so even leaders at the executive level, I'm not asking them to go and learn how to build a new foundational model, right? I'm saying you have to understand the power of AI. And if you appreciate the power of AI, you can reimagine your operating model. You can reimagine your business model. And I absolutely agree with you. All of this is about empowering humans to do more with what they have, right? That's what I would say.
Speaking about empowering humans, there's also the fears and concerns that come with this. So Daniel, is there any truth behind the fear that AI will eliminate jobs?
Yeah, great question. And I think some of my colleagues have answered some different angles for this already. But I think for some jobs, yes, I think that's the truth, especially jobs that maybe jobs that would eventually be replaced even without AI. So data entry jobs, a lot of customer support jobs, a lot of jobs that are not really value enabling jobs. Like they need to be there for some reasons, but people don't really like to work on these kind of jobs. And these jobs are easily, let's say, automatable by AI, and a lot of the companies are already doing that. But I would add, similar as the last question, that for most companies, especially in the knowledge worker area, AI will enable more jobs, more technology, more productivity, and even enable use cases or a lot of most companies, especially when you think about technology or use cases, they have such a big backlog, much bigger than what they can deliver usually, right? Because of cost efficiency, because of a lot of the aspects that when you have AI and if you have more efficient, let's say, programmers, for instance, you can do more things. You're not going to do this. You're not going to probably fire your programming 30% of your IT or your programmers because now you are more efficient with AI. You're probably going to be building more things. You're going to be building better products. So I think when we look at that way, and that's what actually happened in all the major transformations, right? The industrial revolution or the digital transformations, we actually enabled more jobs with better technology. So in my opinion, it will replace low productivity, repetitive jobs, but it will augment jobs that people should be probably doing, and more intelligent, more creative jobs on that sense.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think if I answer the question directly, yes, jobs will be lost. However, I'm going to redefine, the terms of the question a little bit and say, I would reword it to say, my job might be lost, but my work isn't. And I think we're moving away from, if we look at why we call jobs jobs, right? The job description is probably the worst way that we can define work. And I'm looking forward to the day, and it will be soon, when the job description dies. That was done because we wanted to operationalize a view of an organization so that we could easily understand its hierarchy, right? And where someone sits in it. But work is actually defined by your skills, your talents, your competencies, your behaviors, your value. All the things that make us as human beings is how we define our work. And work is what will still exist. To the point, and the example I would give you, again, in my domain in recruiting, if you're in sourcing right now, by the end of this year, it is likely that the job of sourcing will go away. It will be done by technologies, right? There's some really great tools. We have one, there's a bunch of companies coming out with AI sourcing tools that are really, really good. And operate at a fraction of the cost of a human being. However, what I'm saying is, if you're in a sourcing role, if you have the talents of a sourcer, the value that you're going to bring to our domain isn't actually going out and searching for other people to fill work. It's going to be in curating the experience that you have with these tools. So if you're in sourcing, I would say you look to add some AI curation and experience delivery skills to your job right now, and redefine your work so that you're the one actually partnering with artificial intelligence to do sourcing, but you're building the experience of and the interactions with those technologies, making the connections, monitoring that, adjusting it, making it more dynamic and making it more human. So you might not be the named sourcer, but you're still controlling the sourcing experience. And that's where you go from job to work. So I wanted to give that example, because this idea that individuals don't have value because AI can replace their value is not what we're talking about. But jobs and roles and work are going to be redefined.
You know, in Ascendion, we have this very simple notion, and this is what we tell all our people. You are more likely to lose your job to another human who knows AI than to AI.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you're thinking about this very differently and thinking about this as being a tool or a catalyst for you to be able to significantly deliver superior outcomes, you can look at this as a very different, you will look at this as an opportunity and not a threat. What I think most people are doing today is, since they're not appreciating the importance of what AI can do for them, they're seeing it as a threat rather than as an opportunity. So we are asking our teams to use this as an opportunity because, you know, as I said, we are a software engineering house. And what are we doing? We have a platform that can do a fair bit of autonomous engineering. You know, today my engineers were demonstrating to me that they can build a data warehouse in a day. And that's crazy, right? But what I'm telling my engineers is that, listen, use this capability to be able to do 10x the amount of work for your clients. That's the value. So think of it, opportunity. You're more likely to lose your job to an AI-aware human than to AI, is my submission.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. We think about it, and we talk about it at Grammarly all the time. Like, Grammarly's like an Iron Man suit that you put on for communication. And like, if you think about AI in that way, it's this additional layer you put on yourself to like superpower yourself. It's just a totally different way of looking at that question. Like, and an example, Daniel brought up customer support. I've worked with customer support software companies a lot of my career. Grammarly spends a lot of time actually helping customer support teams better communicate. And like, you know, I think the reality of what AI is doing to customer support, right? The big players are going to tell you, you can roll out agents and you can, you know, eliminate your team. But first things first, customer support, like with the average company, totally sucks today. And that's because budgets have already been cut on those teams. It's not seen as strategic. Those people are overworked. You know, I just submitted an email to a company I needed help with, and it took them 5 days to get back to me. And they said, sorry, we're overwhelmed at the moment. Like, those support reps don't need to be replaced. They need help. They need assistance getting the basic things. My request was super simple. Like, it was perfect for AI to come in and process. And then those folks can actually spend time getting deeper into the product and go, you know, up level themselves. Maybe they become customer success and they really start to work more strategically with customers to implement the software better, instead of answering these very basic questions on repeat that are in an endless queue in their inbox. And so that really gets to like this natural upskilling that is going to happen and really eliminate the already existing stress that I think a lot of different people feel in their current job of being underwater and overworked. Eliminate that and actually like force them in a good way to upskill to like, hey, I can actually do that. And we see a lot of people jump from customer support into a technical role, into product management, you know, into other groups as well, because they've been allowed, thanks to AI, to actually focus on a little bit more of a strategic problem versus just, you know, responding to chats and tickets without really thinking twice.
Yeah, I love Arun's point, right? AI is not coming for your jobs, but people with AI are. Like, it's a change, and change is always really scary. But look back at history, all the way back to the Industrial Revolution and all the changes that have happened. And has the workforce disappeared? No, it's continued to grow through every single one of those changes, because to the other points, it just continues to evolve the nature of what work is. But it's not necessarily going to eliminate the human element of the workforce. It's just going to change and create new opportunities. And I think history, repeats itself and bears itself out through all the technological changes we've seen through the centuries.
Yeah, I would just add, just as a data point, how true that is. If you look at the computer age, the 80s into the 90s, there was a lot of fear of people that having a computer do all these calculations in office work means the elimination of office workers. And it was really just a transformation of the type of work. But the computer age brought, at least in the US, brought a net new 14 million jobs, right? And so every innovation actually yields more new work than it does work that was eliminated. That's true. But the transformation is what's scary. What's in it for me? I think we started off this conversation with understanding what's in it for me, and leaders that value that conversation and talk people through the cultural change, the psychological change, as well as the technical change, are going to fare far better off than organizations that ignore that.
Totally. In fact, when I talk to young kids who are just graduating from high school, they come and ask me, hey, Arun, should I be doing a bachelor's in computer science? I said, you absolutely should. Just because there are going to be AI agents that can write code doesn't mean you're not required, because now I want us to focus on the big problems we have on the planet. We have climate change. We have so many big issues that need to be solved, that needs sharp minds on solving. So in my opinion, this will also help us divert our attention to some of these huge problems. Look at the California fires. We have to find ways to solve these problems. And I think we can put our engineers and our really sharp minds towards that. So this is, I think, going to actually free up bandwidth, human bandwidth, to solve some of these bigger problems that we face as humankind.
And I think it's every role too. You brought the fires as an example. I would say, in terms of work, blue collar, white collar, I think every job is going to be affected by artificial intelligence. And if you look at the fires as an example, they're using artificial intelligence and predictive models as to where they should be putting the fire lines, right?
Yeah.
And to prevent some of this. And so every single role everywhere, whether you want to be a computer engineer, an aircraft mechanic, a carpenter, a plumber, I don't know any AI that can fix the broken pipe in my bathroom yet. So there's still going to be really great work depending on where you want to go. But the tool that you use will be enhanced with artificial intelligence. There's no doubt.
Yeah. Speaking of sharp minds and tools, the question for all of you, and I think I really love the conversation you've been having. To close out, what becomes of real world expertise in a world that becomes also reliant on AI? Whose talents matter more, if we can even say that? The people who the AI train off of, or the ones who then leverage AI as a tool that then trained off of those folks?
I think both are going to be equally important. We need to continue to improve the efficacy of the AI tools. As we try and apply AI into more and more complex problems, AI needs to continuously improve. So I do believe that the folks who are working on the core AI technology, and we're slowly heading towards AGI, I think it's that group needs to continue to invest in that path. I also, as I said before, and I've said this, I think, several times during our conversation today, there is a real need for subject matter experts, be it a plumber, be it a fire, somebody who's providing first response service, be it somebody who's a computer engineer or whoever else. They all need to understand the power of AI. And so, in my opinion, both constituents are important. One who's building the AI, and the other person who's focusing on applying AI to solve all the problems that we face as humankind.
Yeah, as a maker of AI software at Grammarly, we think about that question a lot. And actually, by default, we don't train on our enterprise customers' data. We have this huge data set of self-serve users that we're able to kind of continue to improve our models. But we don't train on our enterprise's data, and that makes a lot of sense. But you have to think in the long term. If we are not, how are we going to make these models better? And how are we actually going to really continue to improve the models? And I think the answer becomes, it has to be trained on my data for my employees. But I don't want my data, going and benefiting my competitor. And so I think we also have to really think as an industry around how we continue to, we're running out of like internet data to train these things on. That's a very well publicized problem. The models can't find any more data to train on. It really comes down to proprietary data, but using it in the right way to make these models benefit my organization versus everyone else is going to really be the trend that vendors have to live up to. And then, of course, the humans using it. I totally agree with Arun. It's a symbiotic relationship here, but we have to think about the training. The answer isn't just to turn training off for everyone, which I think was our knee-jerk reaction, in 2022, 2023. That's not going to help us all in the long term.
Yeah, I agree with what has been said already, and I would add to it. I think we need to help people understand how these models actually work and how they're trained. So the illustration I would use with people and have used is ask generative AI, for example, to create an image of a clock or a watch and tell me what time it sets that clock or watch at, and inevitably the time is going to be probably 10:10. Why? Because most of the photos of watches and clocks throughout the last 100 years have been at a clock or watch set at 10:10 because it's visually appealing. And so this is what these models have been trained on. Even if you tell the clock or watch or the image generation to say, give me it at 6 o'clock, you'll still get 10:10 because it doesn't know any better. So once we start to explain how these models work and why training data is important and why interacting with these tools so that they will get better is important, I think there's a little bit more less hesitancy, to interact with the tools and to feed data into them. Because otherwise, if we don't make the data sets bigger for these tools will not get better, and we will be stuck with what we have. And they need to evolve if we expect to get greater efficiency and bring the cost of these tools down. Because right now, these tools are actually really expensive on the whole. I mean, look at OpenAI saying that they're charging $200 a month for their top tier membership, and they're losing money because people are using so much of the bandwidth of the, from a data perspective. So we need to really think about this and how we participate, what is private data versus what isn't. And I agree with what was said, like at Phenom, we don't allow our enterprise data to train the model. That's for corporate IP privacy purposes, of course, but what other ways can we make these models more effective with new sets of data? And that's what we've got to look at.
Yeah, and probably going to be some like data federation, data sharing strategies that companies will voluntarily, willingly give that data because it's for the greater good somehow, right? For the models, and it's a challenge. But I would add that the challenge is not only individually, but also for companies, like for enterprises, because if everyone has access for the same models, that's the challenge they have now. A lot of the products or the features are kind of the same. If you don't have like your own IP, your own way of doing things, right? So the real world experience, like what's your company is about, or what your job, your role, your own experience, is actually maybe even more important when you have AI, because AI kind of levels a lot of the work, especially in junior or mid-level for people. But if you think about companies, when you look at features that are kind of common features, right? But when you look at SaaS, for instance, a lot of the SaaS tools have the same features because they're needed, but then they have something that is special. And this is special sauce that each company has. It's even more important because the rest everyone has. You can't really say like, now I have state-of-the-art, I don't know, SSO security. Like everyone will have SSO. It's like, it's not a differentiator anymore because it's easy to do with AI and with the APIs that we have in the market. So you need to really focus what makes you different when you have such as powerful technology as AI that can make the common features easier to build.
Great. Awesome. All right. Listeners, anyone else have any other final thoughts on that? Listen, I really appreciate each of you and all of your time on this. Ryan, Daniel, Cliff, Arun, Luke, you've been fantastic. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
To listen to the entire conversation, look for the Das1 Hunt podcast on Spreaker, Spotify, Amazon Music, and other popular podcast platforms.